From the Oklahoman newsroom, this is an OSU update. I'm Jenny Carlson here in studio. We got some comings and goings with Oklahoma State football. A little bit unexpected maybe, but Scott Wright joins us on the phone to talk about these two guys. Scott, let's start with the guy who's coming, that being Deondrick Glass, a running back who had offers from a ton of schools out there. He picks the Cowboys, though, on Monday afternoon. What do we know about this guy? What kind of a player could he be for the Cowboys?
He looks like a big-time player, 5'11", 200 pounds, good speed, really versatile. Like you mentioned, a lot of offers, Alabama, Georgia, Miami, some big-time programs that were in on this guy, Texas. When he picked his hat yesterday at the Blue-Gray All-American game, it was Texas, Alabama, and OSU hats on the table. So it's a big get for Oklahoma State. They obviously lost two running backs coming out of the season, with Justice Hill going pro early and J.D. King transferring. They were able to fill both of those spots, one with Glass and one with junior college transfer Desmond Jackson. So this was really important for Oklahoma State to refill those spots, and they get one of the guys that was probably at the top of their list as far as running back recruits in this recruiting class.
Is this, I guess you can never know what guys are going to do, Scott, in a situation like this, but considering all those other teams that he had available to him, is this a bit of a surprise? I mean, I don't know that we'll ever know for sure what Oklahoma State coaches think, but it's definitely a guy that will stand at the top of their recruiting class this year. So how much of an unexpected get was this for Oklahoma State?
Back in December, it sort of felt like a little bit of a long shot, at least. But as he got when he didn't sign in December, and you saw some other programs sign some guys. Alabama got a 5-star guy on signing day, and you thought that might knock out one of his options there, or at least make him hesitate to go there when you got that kind of competition also coming in, if he's looking to play right away. So some other things happened that made you think Oklahoma State had a much better shot after signing day. So it was an interesting process to watch happen, because he was a guy that was out there, and I think Oklahoma State probably, if they had felt better about their chances in December, maybe wouldn't have pursued Desmond Jackson, the junior college running back, quite so hard. But they knew they needed a couple of guys at that position, and were able to fill it. So this was, by the end of it, it started to lean toward Oklahoma State quite a bit, but a month ago it didn't necessarily feel that way. So this was good work by the Cowboys staff to make the effort and get this guy to commit to him yesterday.
Before we get on to the guy who's going from the OSU program, one more question about Glass, Scott. That being, how does he fit? What kind of running back can we expect to see this true freshman become? I mean, we obviously know, as you mentioned before, while OSU's thin at running back, they seem to have a guy in Chuba Hubbard who's going to be the obvious, first guy out come next season. Had a great end to this last year as a redshirt freshman. But where does Deondrick Glass fit into the plan? How much could he impact Oklahoma State next year as a true freshman?
That will be the interesting question, because obviously he won't get in until August. He does have some guys ahead of him, but he's a little bit he's kind of the do-it-all type of guy. Just watching him in what they did with him at the All-American game yesterday, they at one point lined him up in the slot and ran him on a reverse. They threw the ball to him, so he can do a lot of things. At 5'11", 200, he's not the biggest guy in the class, but he's not on the depth chart, but he's not the smallest guy either. So he's sort of in the middle there. He's got a lot of things that he can do to bring some versatility. With everybody that they've got, it might be in Oklahoma State's best interest to redshirt him next year. We'll see what they end up doing there. Obviously, Jamil Jeter is a similar type of back to him. That's a little bit bigger, and it has a year in the system now. So they could choose to let him redshirt and get more familiar with the system before he's ready to jump in there. But based on him yesterday, he wants to go win the Heisman next year.
Yeah, I don't know if he wants to redshirt. He's talking about winning major awards as a freshman, so we'll see.
Yep.
As I mentioned before, Cowboys do have a departing player, that being Tyron Johnson, Scott, the receiver who had a great Liberty Bowl performance. And maybe while Deondrick Glass committing to the Cowboys might have been on the unexpected side, seems like Tyron Johnson was leaning maybe towards leaving. Was his departure came on the last day that underclassmen could declare for the NFL draft? Did that surprise anybody, though, that he's headed towards the NFL?
Not really. There have been some rumblings, nothing that anyone could nail down. Nobody was saying anything definitive about it. But there had been some whispers that this is where he was looking, and it wasn't a big shock. As you got to Monday morning, you started to wonder, is this going to happen or not? Being that Monday was the last day that he could make his decision, but it did happen there Monday afternoon around 3:30, no, overall not a shock that he would make this decision. Obviously, a really talented guy, and been in college for 4 years and ready to move on with his career.
A starter for the Cowboys, Scott. Obviously, they've got some depth at that wide receiver position. It was tested a little bit this year with injuries, but where does this leave that wide receiver group? They'll clearly have a top guy in Tyron Wallace coming back. Dylan Stoner remains, but you lose two guys that were starters at the beginning of the year, and Jalen McCluskey and Tyron Johnson. How much of a hit is this to that wide receiver group?
It doesn't necessarily test the depth, but it's going to test the inexperience, because Tyron Wallace and Tyron Johnson did not come off the field a lot at those two outside receiver positions. Mm-hmm. We expected to see L.C. Greenwood more this year. Patrick McCaughlin was a guy that was being talked about early in the year before he tore his ACL. C.J. Moore got a lot of talk down the line later in the year, but he wasn't a guy that we saw on the field. He redshirted. So you've got another guy, Braden Johnson, who played some but not a lot. Also moved and played some inside receiver when they got really thin there. So and then Jonathan Shepard was another big guy from last year's recruiting class that made some strides this season. So they've got a lot of options at those outside receiver positions. They're really deep at the outside receiver, much more so than they are on the inside. But the question is, who's going to be the guy that steps up? They've got so many options that they need somebody to establish themselves as the guy that they can put out there and that can be a viable option opposite Tyron Wallace, because that's what you saw Tyron Johnson become so valuable at, especially down the stretch when everybody was trying to take away when everybody was trying to take away Tyron Wallace, Tyron Johnson started having his best games of the year. Mm-hmm. 32 catches, 440 yards, and 4 touchdowns in the last 5 games of the season after Wallace had really shown himself as the Biletnikoff candidate that he was. So that's going to be the big question for those Oklahoma State receivers, the young ones on that other side.
All right, lots to flesh out after a Monday that saw some comings and goings with Oklahoma State football. Spring football will be here before you know it. We'll start to get some of those answers as the Cowboys get back on the field here in a few months. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.